I never thought I'd be the kind of person who'd fall for a straight guy. I mean, I'd heard all the stories, all the warnings from my friends about how that path only leads to heartbreak. But here's the thing, nobody tells you about falling in love with someone you work with, someone who sits 3 desks away from you, someone who you thought you had completely figured out. Sometimes the person you think you know better than anyone can surprise you in ways that turn your entire world upside down. His name was Miles. Miles Chen. He'd been working at our marketing firm for about 2 years when I joined the team, and from day one, everyone knew Miles. He was that guy, you know. The one who organized the fantasy football league, who always knew where the best happy hour deals were on any given Thursday, who could make even the most boring client meeting feel bearable with a well-timed joke whispered just loud enough for you to hear. He had this energy about him, this easy confidence that drew people in. Dark hair that was always slightly messy in that deliberate way, sharp jawline, and these eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled, which was often. I'm Reed, by the way. Reed Morrison, and I'm the guy who spent his first 3 months at the company trying very, very hard not to stare at Miles during team meetings. I'd been out since college, comfortable with who I was, and I'd learned to navigate straight male friendships without making things weird. Miles and I became work friends pretty quickly. We'd grab coffee, complain about our boss Sarah's obsession with synergy, collaborate on projects. It was easy, uncomplicated. He was straight, I was gay, and that was just how it was. Every Friday, Miles would head out with the guys from the office. There was this whole crew, maybe 6 or 7 of them, who'd hit up sports bars, catch whatever game was on, stay out way too late for people who had to be functional on Monday morning. They'd invited me a few times early on, and I'd gone once or twice, but honestly, sitting in a loud bar watching basketball while guys yelled at screens wasn't really my scene. No judgment, just not my thing. So Friday nights became my time. I'd go home to my apartment in Capitol Hill, order takeout, maybe hit up a queer bar with my actual friends, or just exist in my space without having to be professional Reed from marketing. This went on for months. We had our rhythm, Miles and I. Work friends who got along well, collaborated effectively, grabbed lunch sometimes. He'd tell me about his weekend adventures with the guys. I'd tell him about my considerably quieter weekends. It was comfortable, safe, and if sometimes I caught myself noticing the way his shirt fit across his shoulders, or how he'd absently run his hand through his hair when he was concentrating, well, that was my business and nobody else's. Then something shifted. It was subtle at first, so subtle I almost didn't notice. It started maybe 4 months ago, middle of summer. Miles stopped leaving right at 5 on Fridays. He'd linger at his desk, working on things that definitely could have waited until Monday. I'd be packing up, and he'd still be there, typing away. The first time, I didn't think much of it. The second time, I figured he had a deadline. But it kept happening, week after week, and I started to wonder. One Friday in late July, I was heading out around 6, later than usual because I'd been buried in a campaign proposal. The office was mostly empty, that weird quiet that descends when everyone's escaped for the weekend. Miles was still at his desk, staring at his screen with this look that definitely wasn't about work. I slowed down as I passed his cube. "You okay?" I asked, and he jumped slightly, like he'd been lost in thought. "Yeah, just finishing up some stuff," he said. But his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "On a Friday night? Must be pretty important stuff." He laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Not really. Just didn't feel like heading out, I guess." That caught my attention. Miles always felt like heading out. It was kind of his thing. "The guys waiting for you somewhere?" "Told them I couldn't make it tonight." He shrugged, turning back to his screen. "Sometimes you just need a break, you know." I did know, but it seemed weird coming from him. Still, I didn't push it. "Well, don't stay too late. Even Sarah isn't here to appreciate your dedication." He smiled at that, a real smile this time. Yeah, you're right. I should probably head out soon. I thought about that conversation all weekend. There was something in his voice, something I couldn't quite identify. But Monday rolled around and everything seemed normal. Miles was his usual self, joking around, making the morning meeting bearable with his sarcastic commentary about our competitor's latest campaign disaster. Then the next Friday, same thing. Miles at his desk, the guys texting him making excuses. This time I was more direct. Okay, what's going on? I asked, rolling my chair over to his cube. You've bailed on Friday night 2 weeks in a row. Did you have a fight with Jake or something? No, nothing like that. He leaned back in his chair, looking uncomfortable. I don't know. Lately, those nights feel exhausting, you know? Same bar, same conversations, same everything. I'm getting too old for this shit. You're 29, I pointed out. That's not exactly ancient. Yeah, but I feel ancient sometimes. He rubbed his face with both hands. God, that sounds pathetic. Ignore me, I'm just in a weird mood. I should have left it alone. That would have been the smart thing, the professional thing. Instead, I heard myself saying, You want to grab dinner? There's this Thai place near my apartment that's incredible, and honestly, eating alone on a Friday feels pretty pathetic too. The surprise on his face was obvious, but then it shifted into something that looked like relief. Yeah, actually, that sounds really good. And that's how it started. That's the moment I can point to and say, this is where everything changed, even though I didn't know it at the time. We left the office together, took the light rail toward Capitol Hill. And the whole time I was thinking this was just two co-workers grabbing food. Nothing weird about it. Completely normal. Miles had never been to my neighborhood before, and I found myself seeing it through his eyes. The rainbow crosswalks, the pride flags hanging from apartment windows, the easy visibility of queer life that I'd grown so comfortable with I barely noticed anymore. The Thai place, this tiny spot called Lotus, had maybe 10 tables and the best pad see ew in the city. We squeezed into a corner table, ordered too much food like you do, and started talking. Really talking, not the surface-level work chat we usually did. Miles told me about growing up in the suburbs, how he'd always been the social one, the connector, the guy who made things happen. How sometimes that felt like a role he'd been playing so long he wasn't sure where the performance ended and the real him began. That's heavy for Pad Thai, I said, trying to lighten the mood, but he shook his head. No, it's just, you always seem so comfortable with yourself, you know. Like you know exactly who you are and you're cool with it. I envy that. I almost laughed. Miles, I spent most of my teenage years terrified of who I was. Coming out wasn't some magical moment of self-actualization. It was messy and scary, and I lost people I thought were friends. I'm still figuring shit out. But you did it. You made that choice to be honest, even when it was hard. He was looking at me with this intensity I'd never seen from him before. That takes courage. We stayed at that restaurant for 3 hours. The owners were probably cursing us, but we just kept talking, ordering more tea, splitting mango sticky rice we didn't need. Miles told me about his last relationship, a girl named Emma who'd broken up with him 6 months ago because she said he was emotionally unavailable, that he kept everyone at arm's length even when he seemed like the most open person in the room. I told him about my ex, Daniel, who'd wanted me to be more ambitious, more career-focused, when all I wanted was someone to build a quiet life with. When we finally left, stepping out into the warm summer night, Miles looked around the neighborhood like he was seeing it for the first time. Thanks for this, he said. I needed it more than I realized. Any time, I said, and meant it. That should have been it. One dinner between friends, a nice evening, back to normal on Monday. Except Monday came, and Miles stopped by my desk with coffee, the fancy kind from the good place 2 blocks away, made exactly how I liked it. Tuesday, he asked if I wanted to grab lunch. Wednesday, he lingered after our team meeting, asking my opinion on things that had nothing to do with work. By Friday, when he asked if I wanted to check out this new ramen place near my apartment, I was starting to wonder what exactly was happening. "Don't you have plans with the guys?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "Nah, I'm good. The ramen sounds better." So we went, and it became our thing, these Friday dinners. Sometimes we'd try new restaurants. Sometimes we'd just grab pizza and walk around the neighborhood, talking about everything and nothing. Miles started spending more time in Capitol Hill, getting comfortable with the coffee shops I frequented, the bookstore where I'd spend hours browsing, the park where I'd go to clear my head. He never seemed uncomfortable, never did that thing some straight guys do where they're hyper-aware of being in a queer space, performing their allyship. He just existed there, naturally, like he belonged. I was falling for him. God, I was falling so hard, and I knew it was stupid, knew it was dangerous, knew it violated every rule I'd set for myself about not catching feelings for straight friends. But how do you not fall for someone who texts you random thoughts at 2 a.m, who remembers that you hate cilantro and love extra lime, who looks at you like you're saying the most fascinating thing in the world even when you're just complaining about the copier jamming again? My friend Tyler noticed first. We were at a bar in Capitol Hill, one of our usual spots, and I was checking my phone for the third time in 10 minutes. "Let me guess," Tyler said, sipping his gin and tonic. "Miles? He's just telling me about this documentary he's watching. Reed, honey, you need to be careful." I know what I'm doing. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're doing that thing where you fall for a straight guy and convince yourself it's different this time. It's not like that. We're just friends. Tyler gave me a look that said he didn't believe me for a second. "Just promise me you'll protect yourself, okay? I don't want to see you get hurt." I promised, but I was already in too deep to protect myself from anything. August rolled into September. The weather started to cool, that first hint of fall creeping into the evenings. Miles and I had fallen into this routine that felt dangerously close to dating, even though I kept reminding myself it wasn't. Friday dinners had expanded to include weeknight hangouts. He'd come over to my apartment, we'd cook together, watch movies, talk until late. He was comfortable there, in my space, in a way that made my chest ache with want and hope and fear all tangled together. One night in mid-September, we were on my couch, ostensibly watching some action movie neither of us was paying attention to. Miles had his feet up on my coffee table, beer in hand, completely relaxed. I was hyper-aware of every inch of space between us, the way his arm was stretched across the back of the couch, not quite touching me but close enough that I could feel the warmth of him. "Can I ask you something?" he said suddenly, and there was something in his voice that made me tense. "Sure." "When did you know? That you were gay, I mean." It wasn't the first time a straight friend had asked me this, but coming from Miles in this moment, it felt different. Weighted. "I think I always knew on some level," I said carefully. "But I didn't have words for it until I was maybe 14, 15. There was this guy in my high school, and I just couldn't stop thinking about him. Not in a friendship way, in a I want to know what it feels like to kiss him way. That's when I knew I couldn't keep pretending to myself." Miles was quiet for a long moment, staring at the TV without seeing it. What if someone doesn't figure it out until later? Like, what if you spend your whole life thinking you're one thing, and then something happens that makes you question everything? My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. I think that happens to people more often than you'd expect. Sexuality isn't always this fixed thing you figure out at 13, and that's it for life. People grow, change, understand themselves better. Yeah. He took a long drink of his beer. "Yeah, that makes sense." He didn't elaborate, and I didn't push, even though I desperately wanted to. We finished the movie in silence, but it was a different kind of silence than before, charged with something unspoken. After that night, things shifted again. Miles became more tactile, more physically comfortable with me. A hand on my shoulder that lingered a beat too long, sitting close enough that our thighs touched. This one time he absently played with my hair while we were watching TV. I thought I might actually stop breathing. Each touch felt like a question I didn't know how to answer. The guys from work noticed that Miles had basically stopped hanging out with them. Jake cornered me at the coffee machine one Monday morning. "So what's up with you and Miles?" he asked, trying to sound casual and failing. "What do you mean?" "Come on, man. He's ditched us like 6 Fridays in a row to hang out with you. Are you guys, like, together or something?" "We're friends," I said firmly. "That's all?" Jake looked skeptical but dropped it. But his question stayed with me, gnawing at my brain. Were we friends? Were we something else? What the hell were we doing? I decided I needed to protect myself, to create some distance before I got completely destroyed. That Friday, when Miles asked about dinner plans, I told him I had other stuff going on. It wasn't entirely a lie. Tyler had invited me out, and I went, trying to remind myself that I had a life outside of Miles Chen and whatever confusing thing we were doing. But the whole night I was on edge, checking my phone. Miles had texted me 3 times. Just random stuff, a meme, a comment about something that had happened at work, a question about whether I'd seen the latest episode of the show we'd been watching. Each text felt like a little hook in my chest, pulling me back toward him. "You're miserable," Tyler observed around 11. "Just go. Go to him. I know you want to." "I'm trying to have boundaries." "Boundaries are great, but you're also allowed to see where this goes. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe it is different this time." I didn't go to Miles that night, but I did text him back, and we ended up on the phone for 2 hours, talking about nothing and everything until we were both falling asleep. It felt more intimate than any physical touch we'd shared. The next week, Miles seemed different. Nervous, almost. He kept starting conversations and then trailing off, looking at me like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. It was driving me crazy. Finally, on Wednesday, he asked if he could come over after work. Not to do anything specific, just to talk. My stomach dropped. "Yeah, of course," I said, trying to sound normal. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, I need to tell you something." Those words haunted me for the rest of the workday. I ran through every possible scenario. He'd met someone. He'd realized our friendship was getting too intense and needed to scale back. He'd figured out that I had feelings for him and wanted to let me down easy. By the time he showed up at my apartment at 7, I'd worked myself into a state of quiet panic. Miles looked nervous too, pacing my living room like a caged animal. I sat on the couch, waiting, my heart in my throat. "Okay," he finally said, stopping in front of me. "I'm just going to say this, and if it ruins everything, I'm sorry, but I can't keep pretending anymore." "Pretending what?" He ran both hands through his hair, a gesture I'd come to recognize as his tell when he was anxious. "I haven't been honest with you, or with myself, really. Those Friday nights with the guys, I didn't stop going because I was tired of sports bars and the same conversations. I stopped going because all I wanted to do was spend time with you. Every Friday, every night, all the time. And at first I told myself it was just because we were becoming good friends, which we are. But it's not just that. It's so much more than that, and it's terrifying because I've never felt this way about a guy before. Never even considered it as a possibility, and I don't know what I'm doing or what this means. But I know that I can't stop thinking about you, and when I'm not with you, I'm thinking about when I'll see you next. And I think I think I might be falling in love with you, and I have no idea if you feel the same way or if I'm about to make the biggest mistake of my life by telling you this." He said it all in one breath. the words tumbling out like he'd been holding them back for so long they'd built up too much pressure. And I just sat there, stunned, trying to process what I'd just heard. "Reed, please say something," Miles said, and his voice cracked slightly. "You're killing me here." I stood up, closing the distance between us. My hands were shaking as I reached up to cup his face, feeling the slight stubble on his jaw, the warmth of his skin. "I feel the same way," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I've been falling for you for months, trying so hard not to because I thought you were straight and I was just setting myself up for heartbreak." "I thought I was straight too," he said, and he was smiling now, this incredulous, relieved smile. "And then I met you, and everything I thought I knew about myself I don't know, it didn't make sense anymore. You make sense? This makes sense." "Can I kiss you?" I asked, because I needed to hear him say it, needed explicit consent before I crossed this line we could never uncross. "God, yes. Please." Kissing Miles was like coming home to a place I'd never been before. He kissed me like he'd been thinking about it for as long as I had, his hands in my hair, pulling me closer, and I wrapped my arms around him and thought, this is what everyone writes songs about. This is what I've been waiting for. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Miles laughed, pressing his forehead to mine. "I have no idea what I'm doing," he admitted. "I've never been with a guy before. I might be terrible at this." "You're doing fine so far," I said, and kissed him again because I could, because he wanted me to, because this was real. We spent the rest of that night on my couch, kissing, talking, figuring out what this meant. Miles told me about the past few months from his perspective, how he'd started noticing me differently, how it had scared him at first, how he'd tried to rationalize it as just really strong friendship before finally admitting to himself that what he felt was attraction, desire, love. I told him about my own struggle, trying to keep my feelings in check, convincing myself I was okay with just friendship while dying a little inside every time he touched me casually. "I'm going to be figuring this out as I go," Miles said around midnight, his head on my shoulder, my fingers tracing patterns on his arm. "The whole being with a guy thing, being out, all of it. I'm probably going to be awkward and make mistakes. That's okay. We'll figure it out together. What about work? Do we tell people? We don't have to decide that tonight. Let's take this one step at a time. No pressure, no rush. We have time." He tilted his head up to look at me, and the vulnerability in his eyes made my chest tight. "I'm really glad it's you, that I'm figuring this out with you." "Me too." The next few weeks were like existing in this perfect bubble. We kept things quiet at work, not hiding exactly, but not advertising either. We were still figuring out what we were to each other, learning how to be together. Miles stayed over most nights, and I learned all these small things about him. That he was a blanket hog, that he liked his coffee disgustingly sweet, that he got grumpy if he didn't eat breakfast, that he was surprisingly affectionate in private, always wanting to touch me, hold my hand, kiss me for no reason other than because he could. He was nervous about the physical stuff at first, unsure and self-conscious in a way that was honestly endearing. But he was also enthusiastic and willing to learn, and we took things slow, communicating constantly, figuring out what felt good, what we both wanted. It was different from any relationship I'd had before, watching someone discover this part of themselves, being trusted enough to be part of that discovery. We told Tyler first because he'd already figured it out anyway. Miles was nervous about it, his first time telling someone he was dating a guy, but Tyler just hugged him and said he was happy for us, and that he expected to be best man at our wedding. Miles laughed at that, but I noticed he didn't deny the possibility. Telling the guys at work was harder. Miles agonized over it for days. He wasn't ashamed, he insisted. He just didn't know how to bring it up, didn't know how they'd react. Finally, one Friday when they asked him again about ditching them, he just said it. "I've been seeing someone. Reed. We're together." The silence that followed felt endless. Then Jake said, "Oh, thank God. We thought you were mad at us or something. That's great, man." Seriously. And that was it. Some of them had questions. Most of them were just happy he was happy. A few were awkward about it at first, but they got over it. Miles was relieved and a little surprised by how anticlimactic it was. His family was a bigger challenge. He wasn't ready to tell them yet, and I respected that. Coming out is a process, not an event, and everyone gets to do it on their own timeline, but I could see it weighing on him, especially when his mom would call and ask about his dating life and he'd deflect or change the subject. "I want to tell them about you," he said one night, lying in my bed, staring at the ceiling. "I'm just scared. What if they don't accept it? What if I lose them?" "Then you'll still have me," I said simply. "And Tyler, and our friends, and everyone else who loves you for who you are. Your family's reaction doesn't change the validity of what we have." "When did you get so wise?" "I'm not wise. I've just had more time to think about this stuff, and for what it's worth, I think you might be underestimating them. But even if I'm wrong, even if they struggle with it, you deserve to live authentically. You deserve to be happy." He rolled over to face me, running his thumb along my jaw. "I am happy. Happier than I've been in years, maybe ever. That's because of you. It's because of you, too. Because you were brave enough to question what you thought you knew about yourself. Because you were willing to risk our friendship to tell me how you felt. That took courage." We kissed, slow and sweet, and I thought about how far we'd come from those early Friday dinners, from coworkers to friends to whatever this was. Love, I guess. Messy, complicated, beautiful love. Miles did eventually tell his family. It didn't go perfectly. His dad needed time to process. His mom cried. There were some tense conversations, but they didn't reject him, and slowly, carefully, they started to come around. The first time his mom asked to meet me, Miles was so nervous he almost canceled 3 times. But it went okay. She was polite, asked me questions about my life, and by the end of the dinner, she was showing me embarrassing photos of Miles as a kid. It was a start. It's been 6 months now since that night Miles showed up at my apartment and turned my world upside down. We're not perfect. We argue sometimes, usually about stupid stuff like whose turn it is to do dishes or Miles's tendency to leave his shoes in the middle of the floor where I trip over them. He's still figuring out his identity, still learning what it means to be a queer man in the world. I'm learning too, how to be patient, how to support someone through that journey, how to build something real with someone who's discovering themselves alongside me. But every Friday night, we're together. Sometimes we go out, trying new restaurants or catching a movie. Sometimes we stay in, cooking dinner and watching TV. Sometimes we meet up with friends. Miles now comfortable in queer spaces in a way he never was before. It doesn't matter what we do. What matters is that we're together, that he chose this, chose me, chose honesty and vulnerability over the easier path of pretending. Last Friday, we were walking through Capitol Hill after dinner, hand in hand, and Miles stopped suddenly in the middle of the sidewalk. "What?" I asked, worried something was wrong. "Nothing's wrong. I wanted to remember this moment, being here with you, being myself, being happy. A year ago, I never could have imagined this. Now I can't imagine my life any other way." I pulled him close, kissed him right there on the street corner, not caring who saw. Because he was right. This life we're building together, this love we found in the most unexpected way, it's worth remembering. It's worth celebrating. It's worth everything. People always ask me now if I'm glad Miles stopped going out with the guys, if I'm grateful for whatever made him start spending his Friday nights with me instead. And the truth is, I'm grateful for all of it, for every moment that led us here, for his courage in questioning himself, for the friendship that became something more, for the love that surprised us both. I'm grateful that sometimes the person you think you know completely can surprise you. That sometimes straight isn't as straight as everyone assumes. That sometimes the best love stories are the ones you never saw coming. Miles isn't my straight coworker anymore. He's my boyfriend, my partner, my person. And every Friday night when he comes home with me instead of heading out with the guys, I'm reminded that the best things in life are the ones you never planned for, the ones that sneak up on you and change everything, the ones that make you believe in possibility, in growth, in the beautiful messiness of becoming who you're meant to be. That's our story. That's how my straight coworker stopped being straight, stopped being just a coworker, and became the person I want to spend every Friday night with for the rest of my life. And honestly, I wouldn't change a single thing about how we got here.